Landing in the Middle East, how global medtech companies can enter, scale, and succeed.
Spirit, and it's just wonderful to be here in Dubai with all of this innovation and inspirational leadership, so purposeful, that is happening around us. Today I'm honored to be here with some amazing visionaries who have many, many years and decades of experience in this, to debate and discuss what we need to be thinking about for global companies to come in here, and what are some of the surprises, the pitfalls, and the best practices. So I'm going to jump right in to the discussion. If I think about myself and the role of MedTech, I think of myself as an analyst in 1995, maybe when the time that some of you may have been born, where I started my first job as an analyst for medical devices. And I remember learning and counting. We had to do forecasting for medical devices, and we were really taught about the box. Medical technology today has come so far along from what we used to sell as the box. We had all these companies like Medtronic and J&J and Becton Dickinson, and this is all in the US, large US conglomerates who were selling boxes. And they used to look at the install base, they used to look at the cost of the product and the replacement rate, and that's how they built their businesses. But today, if I look at medical technology, it's a very, very different space. The landscape is an interconnected network of technology, platforms, services. The stakeholders have increased tenfold now. We not only have the hospitals and the providers, we have retail, we have pharmacy, we have consumers, we have logistics because of delivery of care to homes and other centers. We even have financial involved in that. And really, the way the industry has moved is we've moved from selling the box to selling the software, which is helping to build the data and give you the outcomes and the results. And from that now, we've moved to AI, which is helping you with precision medicine, which is helping you with predictions. And eventually, we'll move to quantum and a lot of the work as we call intelligent health. So why would anyone want to come to this part of the world? And when I say this part of the world, I'm really talking about GCC. And that's the question we're going to be thinking about. What is it just going to be a lateral growth that people come here for? Do they come here because it's a great market in terms of the number of countries represented, so it becomes a living lab for the world? Or do they come to, for some other reason? And we'll debate some of the best practices to be able to do that. I believe if I look at this part of the world, I think one of the main reasons that, in my view, this is a market which has tremendous velocity. Every single country, whether it's Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, we all have visions that we're working around. And part of these visions are that we're working towards a value-based care model, we're working towards prevention, we're working towards precision. So this is the hotbed. Really, it's the powerhouse for technology and innovation. I think the other aspect of this area is that it's a central location to everything else. It's like a bridge for the world to be here. And I think it's a very exciting place, and that's why it makes events like MedTech World so exciting. So my first question really to the panelists are that, when companies are looking at coming here, what are some of the criteria, and why would they choose one region versus the other when we are looking at this market? And we'll just go down the list.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Assalamu alaikum. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking around. And I guess the question is, what is the most attractive, or what could be the attractive things that would attract MedTech industry into this region? I definitely would suggest, number one, the cultural mix. I mean, they have a very highly cultural, diverse region with multiple nationalities, ethnicities that could actually help in the extension of the research that normally is either focused on a single ethnicity or a single background. And I think that's an area of huge attraction. Also, from a regulation point of view, having worked in the UAE now for the last 17 years. And having lived here for 47 years, I believe some of the attractiveness that comes out from the UAE, Saudi, the regulators are always leading the way, and we live in a region where the government is taking always the lead on the initiation of innovation, attracting the private sector, and giving guidelines and giving strategies that are very attractive. I think that's another attractive element. The third attractive element is the proximity, as you mentioned. We are within a 5-hour travel radius, can cover up to 3 billion or 4 billion population. So we have a huge coverage, geographical coverage within the vicinity of the GCC countries. And that allows us also to look at the diversity of samples, the different diseases, the different capabilities that the MedTech companies and MedTech industries can bring into this region. I'll stop here to allow my colleagues to give some more.
Yeah, I think, Mazir, I think you've mentioned a very important point here. You talked about the way innovation comes from top down, and I think that's a very critical point. Coming out of the US, it's a very different system. It's a system which is completely bottom up. It's a free market economy. Everyone does what they want and they compete, and it's basically a capitalistic system. But when we come to this part of the world, it's really a top-down system. The government lays the foundation for what needs to happen. It creates the infrastructure and the platforms and the operability of that system to orchestrate care across many settings, and then everyone has to follow that. So it's a system which is much more regulated and hence easy to work. Suresh, Babu, is there anything else you would like to add to this?
Great. Good evening, everyone. See, if you look at the market, this is a gateway to global south, am I right? So market is a very matured, and adoption on the innovative technologies is extremely high compared to the other developed and developing market. So that gives a lot of opportunities to come to this market, to test the market. However, the challenges, if you look at it, as Dr. Mazin said, cultural, people, those matters. And the most important thing, if the product is matured with CE or FDA approved, then access to the GCC market is much, much easier. However, this was the the last decade scenario. The recent developments in the Middle East, in the GCC, now they allow the companies who are in a startup to come and do the pilots and clinical trials in the market, and they also get certified and give the market access without CE and FDA as well. So that's a route which gives a lot of opportunities for the startup companies. And top of that, if you look at the investments happening in the fintech and medtech segment from the support from the governments of Abu Dhabi and the UAE and the Saudi, there is a plenty of opportunities for the new startup companies to access the healthcare funds.
Great, thank you so much. Tamara, you've worked in this business, amazing. Your career has been through so many different hospital groups as a CIO. Maybe you can give us some advice of what you think of the whole aspect of distributor versus partnerships, because this market in a way lends itself so much more to partnership than distribution, and yet we've seen so many, not mistakes, but lessons learned from choosing the wrong distributor and not having the partner. So if you can share some of your experience.
Sure. I think this is a great breeding ground, and I see it more for partnerships. So like for us, at least in our organization, we do actually, for example, Fakeeh has 100 million riyals invested in a center of excellence for healthcare AI, just healthcare AI. And most of that is not done. We don't hire companies to do it. It's through partnerships. So we look at multiple startups out there, we invest in them, we bring them so we provide that breeding ground for them, that incubator for them to grow. So it's working with them all the way from prepping them, getting them started, funding them, to working through their clinical trials, which we conduct in our hospitals. And you were talking a while ago about why come to the Middle East. I think having that clinical trial space. I have a friend of mine, and she has an application, nothing really clinically that's going to cause a lot of complications or difficult, but she wanted to get it validated in the US, so she wanted to get the FDA approval for that. She went to Harvard and a couple of things, and they were charging her in the prices of $2 million USD, which is kind of like really, I mean, for a startup, how could they afford that? So in the KSA, it's the actual opposite, that you'll find healthcare organizations that will partner with you, and actually not only will they do that clinical trial for you, but they actually work with you to configure it, to build it into the workflow, so that in the end you get a usable product that actually worked. And as a byproduct, you'll get the publication, the paper, and everything. And they also help you, like my organization, we help those who are working with us to even submit through the SFDA. We help them work through all the requirements, and we help them with that submission. And that usually helps get them very fast track through that process.
Thank you so much. Marwan, is there any other thoughts you had on why people should come to this region, or anything on partnerships versus distribution? Any of your thoughts through your experience?
Yes, of course. First of all, thank you to the organizers. Thank you, Dylan and MedTech, for having us here, and for everyone in the audience. I'd like to say it's an honor to share the stage with Mazin. I've seen him on the stage all these years, so Mazin, you know you've made it when you're on stage with Mazin. So let's talk about the ecosystem. One thing that we have here in the UAE that is very special and very unique is the regulators, the investors, the ecosystem builders such as Masdar City. They help the MedTech companies from day zero. They sit down with them, they show them the different pathways, the whatever care pathways they're going to, distributors versus ecosystem. Everyone's aligned from day one, and the custodianship of each activity is laid out. So it's extremely clear for the different entities where to go, who does what, and how you can be helped across the value chain. And that's something you won't see anywhere else, to be honest. And we debrief, we have task forces, we have working groups, we care about diagnostics in a different way, and we care about ulcer devices different ways. So we really know where to segment the different tech companies and how to help them.
Wonderful. So my next question is really, there are a lot of startups in the environment here, and I'm sure they're here in the audience. What advice would you give them in terms of regulatory, what they should do, how they should look at it? There's different regulatory for different countries. How do you work through that? Masir, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate my honor to be on the same stage as you, Reenita, and Dr. Tamara, because you guys are my role models. So thank you for having me on the stage. But so what is my advice for the startups when it comes to the regulatory landscape? Do your homework. We have 5 different regulatory jurisdictions. If I look at Saudi, Qatar, UAE, I'm talking about 5 different regulatory jurisdictions, and these regulatory jurisdictions are different in the way they, I mean, similar in some ways, but different in some other ways. But okay, if you look at the 3 countries, UAE, Saudi, Qatar, if you look at the Ministry of Public Health in Qatar, the Ministry of Health and the Saudi FDA, and if you look at the Ministry of Health and Prevention in UAE, along with the new establishment, the Emirates Drug Establishment, there is a lot of, you need to understand what are the different aspects from these different regulators. The good news is the medical devices are regulated on a national level, on a federal level, and my colleagues here, Suresh and Marwan and Dr. Tamara will dive into more detail, but I think in the UAE specifically we have the Ministry of Health and the EDE, which is going to be the emulator of Saudi FDA, and for a regulation and how to get into the countries, always remember having an FDA approval and a CE marking and an MDR regulatory approval back in Europe would always facilitate an accelerated avenue for you to get into the market. Also, looking at partnerships, one of the areas that could actually help you is to find the partner that goes beyond a distributor. We were in a workshop 2 weeks ago in Cairo. A lot of the distributors in the region, they are looking at actually breaking beyond the transactional model of a distributor. How do they actually come into becoming a true partner and help you in the, if it requires further clinical trials or studies, how can they help you go through the processes? And I think qualifying your local partner just to start you into the market is always an important step. Number 3 is the areas that you need to look at, working with the regulators and seeking knowledge and being present physically. This region loves human-to-human interaction. We love AI, but there's nothing better than emotional intelligence, having coffees, teas, and dinners with your clients, your potential regulators, and actually do meet them, come and meet them. Open door policy is implemented with force. If you go to Saudi, SFDA is approachable. If you go to Dubai, you talk to the Dubai Health Authority. In Abu Dhabi, you can meet the Department of Health and the EDE establishment. You have partners like Masdar, where Marwan is, can facilitate those meetings. You have a great sovereign wealth fund that works closely with Atlas Medical, where Suresh is there. They will help you to also find. So again, I'm not promoting anybody for no percentages or commission, but I'm just telling you the doors are open, but you need to invest in your physical presence. Those are the 3 major points that I wanted to highlight.
Critical points, very, very critical. Suresh, anything from your side in terms of your experience of last 25 years working in this region?
Just to add on to my friend Dr. Mazin. See, UAE is pretty easy on the regulatory side, which if you look at on the classification of the device, if the device is not invasive, it's easy to get, and the timeline also is much faster to get it. However, for startups, we need to go for a clinical trial, and if it's an invasive device, and then it has to go for a full registration, including the factory audit. Sometimes the Ministry of Health can ask for the factory audit to see the quality process and ISO process. So that's the process which takes 6 months probably. On top of that, if the MedTech devices have an IT embedded or AI embedded, then it's also very critical to meet the data regulations on GDPR, and the IPA compliance is very, very critical to get the clinical approval in the UAE market. So primarily we focus Atlas Medical, which is part of the Cyrus Holding Group and our parent group IHC. So Cyrus is one of the largest investment group in the healthcare in the UAE market and across the region. So we have partners with us. We are a 50-year-old company, and we are partners like Philips is our 40-year-old partnership, and we do have startups in our portfolio to bring to the market, because that's where the market is moving on, the innovations. So that's where we help companies to come to the market. But as Dr. Mazin said, they have to do the homework, the market fit, and other things they have to consider.
Yeah, I think a point as well needs to mention is many global companies think that they have the perfect product, and then they come in here and the product market fit may not be there as well. Tamara, can you talk a little bit of what you've seen in your experience around that area?
So I just also want to remark a bit about the regulations in Saudi Arabia. I think it's a little bit more easier because it's like a one sort of governance. The Saudi FDA makes it very clear and it's very transparent. So you can actually go on the website. It's very clear how you can apply and how to get through those spaces. I was lucky to work with the first AI as a medical device. He was here yesterday, Mashari Al-Washmi. I was very lucky to work with him on his clinical trial and get that through. So it is very doable, and it's even if you don't have that CE or you don't have that US FDA, very easy to get through, and hats off to him because he was the first one to go through all of that and made it easier for some of us for the rest of the people to follow. Sorry, the other question?
No, the question I was going to ask is, the product market fit, when you bring in a global product, say you're bringing in a product from the US and the environment that you're selling in is very different, We've had a lot of failed stories where the product has
Yes.
not been successful because of the product cultural fit
Yes.
not there, and language and all of that. So
Yes.
any thoughts on that?
Oh, yes. So localization of the product, I can't say how important that is. Two things here. First of all, you have a product, you need to, first thing you do when you hit the market, you need to get it, you have to register your IP. That would be the first thing I would do before I go out to SFDA or anything like that. So after you get that done and you bring that market, that's why when we just talking a little bit while ago about partnerships, this is where partnerships come. And because you're going to have to localize that product, whether it's the language, whether it's the usability, and remember, nobody buys a product for a product, right? They buy it so that they can use it, right? So we have to figure out. I'm sure it's perfect and everything, but how does it fit into the workflow, right? How can we make sure this product works as intended? And then it's the intended use, which you're going to need to know for your FDA approval. But how does it work in the workflow is what you need to work out with caregivers. And how it works in the U.S. might be totally different in this region because there are different regulations, different laws. So, for example, shipping of somebody wants to do, for example, a medical device that extracts blood and sends basically they send it to patients to do at home. So there are certain regulations you need to abide for, from whether it's management of information or from a device perspective. So localization and, more importantly, how it fits into the workflow needs to be kind of figured out. And this is always best done with a partner. So you might think it's okay, let me go get a consulting firm to help you. I don't think it's that, because people can talk about it, but it's not actually until you do that clinical trial, till you use it, and then you're like, oh, what about this? Oh, what about that? Oh, they don't carry this type of battery here, so that's where you go wrong.
Yeah, I think you bring up a very important point, the whole aspect of digital maturity, because you've been working in that space so long. We're finding that that's one of the biggest impediments to adoption, right? Because the friction points are so much that the product doesn't get used by the actual people on the ground. So I think your advice to actually see it happen, pilot it, is very, very critical. Marwan, if there's any thoughts you had on product market fit or regulatory?
Yeah, I would say do your homework, understand where is day zero for you. So if you want to raise money, which grants are you applying to? Are you going to family offices? Are you talking to VCs? So you put these three buckets to a side. And then you go to the ecosystem players. So the Masdar cities, the Kizads, the DIFC, Dubai Science Park. You talk to these guys, right? Because they're meant to help you understand and navigate. And I look at it in a way where you get stars, you get little badges. If you have a partnership deal with the operator, you have a free zone license, you've raised some sort of money, even if it's a grant, like the Ma'an grant from the Department of Health. As you do these three things, you're filling up your toolbox, and then you can finally be presented by us, the ecosystem, to whoever you want to meet, whether it's a hospital, an investor, a regulator. The EDE now is making things very easy for medical devices. So I'm type 1 diabetic, I have an insulin pump, I have a continuous glucose monitor, and I was one of the first people to use a sensor in Abu Dhabi in 2007. So this is an area that loves innovation. So for all the startups, the scale-ups, localize. I fully agree with Dr. Tamara. Localize your efforts. I would say in-country value now is a competitive edge. It's not a cost. So come here, do your homework, and we will help you.
Perfect. So now that we have all the pieces of the puzzle for entry strategy that we've discussed, now we're going to discuss how do you actually grow your business. And I think part of the growth strategy is building your team. And what kind of a strategy should we take towards building a team? Is it going to be a lot of expats? Is it going to be a lot of localization? We know all countries are expecting, especially in Saudi Arabia, there's a huge localization plan for the employees. So how do we go about doing that? And what advice would you have for a company that's thinking about building their talent strategy?
So I think that's a very good question. So talent. It's a big, it's a golden question. It's a big ask and a big treasure hunt. talent acquisition and talent retention and talent um, 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 recruitment. So if you look at the landscape in the GCC countries, there are really good academia or academic institutions. There are really good number of professionals and great talent. Some locally bred, mostly brought from abroad as well. I would look at Saudi with your talent strategy different than looking at the UAE from a talent strategy perspective. So in terms of Saudi, the amount of talent that exists within the universities, there are amazing academias and academic institutions, specifically in the area of biotech, healthcare, it's immense. You know, universities like King Saud University or Kaimark, or sorry, Kaimark is a research institute. But these are good talent hubs. KAXT and KAUST, King Abdulaziz Center for Science and Technology, or King Abdullah Research. King Abdullah, I think KAUST is King Abdullah University for Science Technology. Is that correct? Excellent, got it right. Too many acronyms. So Saudi is full of talent. We're talking about 40 million population country. UAE, there is a lot of talent, but most of the talent is expats. But you need to make sure that you have a balanced approach to try and bring in the talent and grow the talent. And so is Qatar, by the way. So the field of biotech or biomedical sciences is looked at hugely. Abu Dhabi is spending a lot, investing a lot in that field to bring in that industry with its full muscles in, and that includes also building the academic infrastructure for talent incubation. Most of the talent that you will target is again, you'll have to think about retaining them, because sovereign wealth funds are also doing the same. They're actually going out there in the biomedical sciences and the medtech industry and recruiting the best talent to try and localize this industry. So the whole region is moving into localization, not just by moving the factories and the research labs and the infrastructure from a physical perspective, but also try to bring in talent. Still, the talent scarcity is a major issue. So I presume looking at a balanced approach for marriage of talent from abroad and talent from within, partnering with academic institutions, those who are working hard, Khalifa University in Abu Dhabi, MBRU, Mohamed bin Rashid University in Dubai, and other universities are also good talent incubators that needs a lot of good startup and industry partnership. So I think it's a balanced approach that needs to be done. Localization of that is necessary, but also spicing it up with international talent. But think about sustainability. We don't want that what happened in COVID happen to us now. What happened in COVID, Reenita? In the first 3 months, we lost 30% or 20% of the nursing population in one emirate because of the immigration programs into the UK and the US. How do we keep talent? We have good programs for golden visa. We have good partnership potential here to try and keep the talent in the UAE.
I think that's a very critical point that you bring up about how to retain talent and keep talent. I think this is a global challenge that is happening. But I think also another big challenge that I see related to talent is also the needs of the requirements of the positions now are changing so much. For example, if I look at it from a provider perspective, from a hospital perspective, there's a tremendous need moving forward by 2040 where we will look at a fusion of tech and clinical workers. So far, we're only looking at clinical workers in that environment, and I think there's going to be need for a seamless kind of flow between tech and clinical. So in a way, the workforce needs are changing as well. So who's going to provide those trainings? Who's going to provide the certification, the upskilling for nurses to combine technology to the needs of the floor? So Suresh, if you want to comment on some of the changing needs for talent as well, which I think is very critical in today's world of transformation.
So interestingly, if you look at the GCC market, it's pretty open market, am I right? If you want to bring tomorrow 100 engineers from any of the international market, you can get it in 3 months actually. So it's much easier to bring people from abroad as well. But however, It's a hybrid of local and international that will give a better edge actually. The core, if you look at on the sales marketing, which requires the local regulatory, all those things, it's better for the companies to hunt in the local market. But if you're looking at bringing a domain expertise of their product line and the R&D and those kind of stuff, it's always, I mean, they can bring from their home country to optimize the cost. They don't need to train. This market I always call as a ready-to-eat market. So if X is experienced on a specific a nursing director or specialized on an intensive care, so if there is a vacancy, chances of getting her is 95% more. The same like in the biomedical as well. If somebody is trained on Philips, if there is a vacancy in Philips, getting is much, much higher than somebody coming and getting trained. So that's how this market works actually. But however, it's a very, very open market, and it's not restricted by visas like US and Europe. If you want to hire a talent, it's not much more difficult, right? So this is a pretty open market. So, and availability of the talents locally and internationally is pretty good.
So basically what you're saying is we just have to look at talent all across the world, and we can't limit ourselves to certain countries. Tamara, what are your thoughts? I mean, I'm sure you're managing talent all the time and being a group CIO, so.
Yeah, I think maybe in Saudi Arabia the situation is a little different. For example, my current organization, they have their own university. So part of what they're doing with that university is that they ensure they have the right case mix of people that are needed in the equivalent, especially in the health tech side. I think it's in KSA. There's a lot of I think it's a lot of organizations I mentioned by Mazin just a little while ago. But there's a good number of organizations that supply those informaticians, right? Because we want somebody who has that clinical piece as well as the IT or the clinical engineering piece. And there are a large number of graduates that are graduating each year from these programs. Many of them in some of these universities are also engaged in a lot of research activities. So one thing that I've learned to tap into are those postdocs, those researchers, right? Because those are a great asset for anybody who's thinking to go into MedTech, because or has a product, because if you have them, like at least they will know how to write that research protocol when you come to do your clinical trial. They'll work with you. Plus, a lot of them are looking to publicize papers. So actually, it creates that win-win situation for all. So if you have a really great graduate student approaching them, and many times, by the way, you will get that partnership with that university for that particular product. So they will work with you on a particular hypothesis or whatever you're trying to work on, and they will help you with with part of that work. And some of you might think, well, oh my gosh, I'm just a startup. I don't have money to fund this. But a lot of them will work. I mean, part of it can be also giving them part of that giving them a few shares or some of that work within that, and that would be, I guess, for the future for you to onboard them as employees once they're done with their research. Of course, they have to declare it as part of their research, but it creates that fusion. I know there's a lot of clinical trials ongoing, and for example, in KAUST has a lot of devices that they're working on. I was very lucky to visit them the other day, and they're working on even making adjustments. And you'll think of, well, it's not only universities. Aramco has two funds actually. Has one fund called WIDE, and that fund for WIDE is for local companies they're not local, but they plan on commercializing in Saudi Arabia and selling to this local market. And then there's another one called Venture 7 that can be anywhere across the world. So there's a lot of opportunities. So I would seek to look for those. And then when I'm building my team, I would definitely want to have some researchers, postdocs on board to help me with the research, as well as locals. Definitely bang on the locals, because sometimes a lot of things are not said but understood. So it would be very beneficial to have them.
So a good blend between the two. Marwan, any thoughts to add?
So allow me to speak from the perspective of what we see in Masdar City. And so what we see in Masdar City when it comes to talent, honestly, I haven't seen that as a problem at all. And there are three layers to this. One, the geopolitical tensions around the world honestly has helped the UAE. So a lot of talented individuals from Africa, from Asia, from even Boston and in Europe, they've been coming here and trying to find jobs and trying to scale up. So that's one. Number two, a university like Mohammed bin Zayed AI University that just opened their undergrad program, they give out free scholarships to some of the smartest students ever, to be honest. So it's our role as the ecosystem to have the companies ready for them when they graduate and then they find a home. So we need to retain them. So I fully agree with Mazin. I think the game here is more retention than where is the talent. And then there's another layer to this, which is what ADIO does, Abu Dhabi Investment Office. So Abu Dhabi Investment Office gives out golden visas to talented individuals, right? So that maintains and keeps them. There's a company in Masdar City called Attentive Science. So they're a preclinical CRO. We're currently in construction for them for a Viveria facility. It would be operational in the next few months. They've been getting CVs left and right for the last 6 months, honestly. So the talent is there. We just need to cultivate it well, have places for the talent to dive into. We don't want them to graduate and they just don't know what to do. So that's what I'm worried about more. So this is to the audience, MedTech, life science, digital health. We need more of these companies here so that there is a safe haven for the students. One more thing I'd like to add is research, right? So the one thing that we need to work on more, this might be a little bit off topic, but R&D incentives. I think incentives is a bigger thing that we need to talk about, not talent. Incentives, subsidies, tax credits for R&D. How can we have these different individuals choose the UAE over Switzerland? Why would they do that? So if we can brainstorm, do some working groups, think of incentives. Let's say you can show the government that you're working on a preclinical trial, and then they'll give you half of the money back. Some ideas like that would work, and will bring more talents that we can definitely scale up.
No, I completely agree with this point. I think I come out of Silicon Valley in California, where the startup ecosystem is so mature now. But if I think about it 20, 30 years back, there was a lot of university grants that were given to students. The entrepreneurship culture starts from when you're 10 years old. In high school, you're building products and going for competitions. And I think that's where the education needs to come in with that system. We need to start creating incubators, accelerators. We need to start channelizing. Innovation can happen only from the ground up rather than have everything coming from outside.
Speaking
so it's a very good point.
Allow me to plug this in. In Masdar City, we have a shared labs incubator that will be operational in April. So if you're interested, please come talk to me after. And it's going to have wet lab, dry lab, PCR, mass spec, flow cytometer, the basics. So the wait list is open.
I'm sure the startups heard that. Okay, I'm going to move from there to look at a big question which has recently come in, which is manufacturing. Do companies really have to manufacture in order to succeed and grow in this region? It's something new that's come in with the in-country value program that Saudi Arabia has started, or the Make in Emirates program that the UAE has started. So what advice would you give companies today in this market about their strategy towards manufacturing? Is it something that gives them a competitive edge? Is it a must-have to be able to operate in this market? Any thoughts, starting with?
I think that this is a very good question, and just to reinforce what my colleagues in the panel said, the region has gone through 50 years of consumption, right? Transaction. Now, the next 50 years from COVID onwards, we are talking about, in the post-COVID, it's about becoming a R&D hub, building roots, building depth in the healthcare industry that was shallow until COVID. But again, generally speaking, the depth is reliant on taking research into commercialization of research. You cannot just do research and just count the number of publications and patents and stop there. You have to complement, the region has to complement its research mechanisms and depth with its manufacturing capabilities. In post-COVID, it's evident that we need to localize supply chain, we need to localize manufacturing. The amount of incentives that have come out from Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, even Dubai, to try and localize manufacturing, the biomedical sciences and the medtech sciences, biotech field is humongous, and you do get advantages by actually bringing your manufacturing. Again, going back, what are the incentives for R&D? We have a lot of funds in Saudi. There are more funds than startups. Can you believe it? The only country on earth that has more funds than actually gaps to answer. That's where the hub, and again, we're talking about Saudi a lot. I'm not discounting what the great work has been done in Oman or Kuwait and Qatar recently. Now they've come up after the fasting period for the post-World Cup period, and they're investing heavily. So again, there's a lot, and AI is opening a lot of those gold mines. So again, if you come into manufacturing, if you try to supplement your entry into the market by partnering with great people like Suresh and bringing some of those manufacturing capabilities to show your depth, you're not here for transaction only, you're here for the long term.
Fantastic. I just realized we're out of time, so if you can just curtail it for 20, 30 seconds max, so we can...
Yeah, the local manufacturing, now the tenders are giving an incentives for the local manufacturing. They give an additional scores to win if the product is, quality-wise, it's locally manufactured or assembled. And a lot of companies started doing in the UAE and Saudi for the, the disposables, even in the pharma industries, it's happening actually.
Tamara?
Yes, local manufacturing, even things like CAR-T or cellular therapy. So it's local, definitely.
Marwan?
Fully agree with everything they said. If you manufacture locally, you will get CapEx and OpEx rebates from entities like the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, and you will be looked at in a different light, in a different bucket, even to get investments.
Fantastic. Thank you everyone for coming and being here. I hope we were able to answer some of your big questions. We're here backstage if you want further discussions. I think this region is all set to become a transformational growth partner for the rest of the world. They're putting in the infrastructure, the intent, purpose, and all the pillars are being set. So it's a very exciting market for us to be thinking about for entry. Thank you so much.